Last week, I read you a piece I'd written in 2021. I'd penned it the day after the vaccine mandates were announced. Auckland was still in lockdown. That was the barn in my analogy. And the anti-vax rhetoric was ramping up. I literally broke down and sobbed that fateful day, not only because I knew the implications that this decision would have for my family and me, but the societal tipping point that New Zealand was experiencing. And most Kiwis were just blindly marching towards it as our government spent millions and even billions of dollars sharply focusing them like the tip of a hypodermic needle. It broke my heart. So I thought it was time to revisit my all-well animal farm analogy and check in and see how things are now looking down at Aotearoa Farm. As the cockerel crows at dawn on Aotearoa Farm, much appears as it was in the days before the sickness. The farm gate is now unlocked and visitors to and from the farmyard can freely come and go. All the animals appear to be going about their business. Even the chickens have begrudgingly returned from the back paddocks, but drenched discrimination is still occurring quietly and is never spoken about by the fat, lazy, compliant media sheep. There's an unsteady peace since the sudden departure of Napoleon Ardern, just after the days of summer feasting, citing her energy for the farmyard was gone, seeking nourishment now in other pastures and farms. Fear not, Napoleon has left the farm in good hands. Chippy Pork was to be rewarded for his work in handling errant chickens and confining sickness to the barn, and now presides over Aotearoa Farm. But could this be temporary for our sausage roll-loving Chippy? As tradition dictates, an election is afoot in the farmyard. This is an affair usually dominated by other factions of pigs in the outdoor styes of Aotearoa Farm. Davy Piglet, a much maligned thorn in Napoleon's side, has grown and gathered more pigs to his sty. Meanwhile, the sty next door, Oinky Lux, who was once in charge of inter-farmyard transportation, has now got his eye on the big house. However, his cause seems stymied by continually getting his trotters bogged down in muck and the sheep's utter glee deleting his misfortune at every opportunity. Over in the KuneKune Wallow, Utu has been planned. Envy at so many KuneKune currently residing in the big house in proximity to the barn by the grace of Napoleon and now Chippy. It's been realised that these KuneKune have only been serving their own interests, not the interests of all KuneKune kind. The cowboy hat wearing Dave Titi and his handler, a shady kuni called Tama, who seems to live beyond his means in the shadow of both the barn and the big house, are now plotting to try and claim not the farmhouse, but as much of Aotearoa Farm for themselves. KuneKune have a very special way of knowing that all other animals on the farm just simply don't understand. So much going on in the yards, barns and pastures of Aotearoa Farm, but according to the sheep and the pigs, frequent rule painting on the barn is quite normal. The rise of the unexpected sickness within the animals is not to worry about, and all animals should be content with their lot in life. Squealer Robinson has been fattening all the farm so heartily for so many years with his miraculous regenerating stores of grain and feed. There is a northern pasture in Aotearoa Farm, one where many of the older animals and those bloody chickens were sent to graze. Feed is plentiful, the sun always shines, and it's just far enough away from the barn, farmyard and the big house as not to annoy the pigs and the sheep as they go about their important work. Winnie Ben, the old donkey, was shifted up to the pasture after decades trotting the cobbles of the central farm. He was a friend of Farmer John before his departure, and in his wake has made an unsettled alliance with Napoleon. This is a story for another day. Winnie Ben has lived a long time. He remembers Aotearoa Farm when it was called Kiwi Farm and was the envy of farms everywhere. Animals lived in harmony. Even the pigs and sheep mixed happily with all other Kiwis. Snouts, trotters, hooves, hair, paws and claws. Sows were sows, boars were boars, and everyone knew the difference. All worked merrily on Kiwi Farm. Life was much happier then. Winnie Ben has watched the changes on Aotearoa Farm, and he would say that God has given him a tail to keep the flies off, but that he would sooner have no tail and no flies. But the flies have grown so thick around the farmhouse, and Winnie Ben's tail has begun to twitch again. If you want to find out more about what's happening at Aotearoa Farm, you'll have to join me next week here on Counterculture.